of tighten it around the bottom. So to start, and so you can see I already have some pieces made, is I would take clay, kind of pancake it out, just flipping it over and over with my hands. And then I could set it down on my board and roll it out with my rolling pin. You only want it to be about half an inch thick, okay? You don't want this big, bulky, chunky base. And it's good to kind of pick it up and flip it so it doesn't stick to your board, especially if your clay is really wet, like this piece is a very wet piece of clay. Get it nice and even. And I think there's a ruler over there if you don't mind handing me one. So we're going to have to measure for this, right? So I'm going to flip it one more time. Thank you. And so I'm going to measure from the edge, okay? And 6 inches. I almost got it perfect, so I'm just going to trim it just a little bit, just to be about 6 inches. And yeah, so 6 inches in all directions. I have a little bit extra. And as you can see, it's not a perfect circle, but pretty close, right? So you can clean it up a little bit if you need to. Just make sure it's 6 inches around. And then we have to score it. So I've already scored this one, okay? And then rolling out my coil. This is the part where sometimes people get frustrated because you'll start to roll it out and you'll kind of realize you'll be like, it is not staying round. So kind of start like this and then make sure your table's nice and clean, doesn't have any hairs and other gross chunks of dry clay. So see how I'm already rolling? Do you see how it wanted to flatten out? It's like it wants to go flat on that one edge. That'll happen. So what you'll do is, here's my two flat sides, and you kind of just tap out the flat part and then keep rolling. Tap, tap, tap. Roll, tap, tap. Just because getting it started is the hardest part. But once you do get it going, then it should kind of roll out for you. And notice how I make sure that my hands are going up and down the entire coil. I'm not staying in one spot, right? Because then it'll go like super thin to thick. We want it to be nice and even. So once I start, feel it kind of squaring out, just give it those nice little pats, and then see now, it's kind of getting there. So I can keep rolling it out. And just like you saw in that video, he would kind of go like this, like, oh, it needs to be longer, right? And you want it to be longer. Longer is good to where maybe you have to trim it a little bit. That is totally fine. That is A-okay and probably preferred. So you saw him, he would trim it with his fettling knife too. And so there's a couple ways that you can do this, and this is going to depend on your design. I, of course, would, just like with this one, I scored my coil, right? And then I would grab some slip. Let's pretend I slipped that whole thing. And then I'd start to add it. So depending on your design, maybe you would cut that coil and then attach it there, or you could just keep scoring. I could go all the way down and then score here, and it can just kind of swirl onto itself. So that's going to be up to you, whether you want to do bands, individual bands, or a piece that comes up, okay? So then, of course, I'm scoring and slipping all the way along. Same if I'm adding little clay balls like on this one. I'd have to score and slip the clay ball. If I was doing more than one, I'd score that, and then kind of put them together. And then as you work, and you can't wait till the end, you have to do it as you work, you can kind of blend some of your shapes on the inside, pushing the clay together, just so we know that it'll stay together. So look at this one on the inside. You can see that they had pushed a lot of the clay together, right? But not on the outside, because we want that full texture. They left holes in theirs. That's going to be up to you. If you want this to be like a functional base that you can put water in, then you obviously need to make sure you blend the inside well enough to where there's no holes. But you don't have to. You could even, if you wanted to, like, keep all the holes and then stick a candle in there. You know what I mean? And then the light would come through. So what you actually use it for, and whether you want it to be completely sealed on the inside, is up to you. But you just have to do a little bit of blending, okay? Just so we know that your pieces will stay together. But keeping that outside texture. I'm trying to think if there was any other... Oh, if you're building a shape, because this one obviously goes straight up and down, right? So So these things would just be stacked straight up, one on top of the other. If you wanted it to come in, what you would do is once you're laying down another coil, you would put it on a little bit closer to the inside. See that? And then it'll start to let your piece kind of go in. And then vice versa, if you wanted it to go out, you would stick it a little bit, not all the way out here, but you would gradually stick your coils or your little clay balls a little bit on the outside, going farther and farther, just to give you that shape. Okay?